to California Expat Anonymous. This is NR Bernie, and with me is NR Snowden.
Hello.
Oh, hello. And we are at Denver, Colorado, pretty much the center of the universe, I guess.
Absolutely, the center of the universe. It's the center of the United States, continental at least, so definitely the center of the universe, ipso facto.
That's right. If you're hearing us, North Korea, Denver, Colorado is what you need to target, okay? The center of the United States.
Well, unfortunately, we got out of California because, a great leader making good strides to being able to maybe one day get close to Hawaii. Maybe eventually could hit California. We might have some time before he manages to cross the Rockies. So.
That's right. Well, okay. So just to give you a little background, this podcast was inspired by conversations we used to have at a nearby bar. And we thought that, probably there are people who would like to hear this conversation and pay us and do something like that. But,
At the very least, it mostly worked out as we would sit there drinking and rambling on. Occasionally people would come over and sit down and want to engage as well. That may have been mostly the alcohol involved, but hey, who the hell knows? We'll put this out online and sober people can take a look and maybe they'll like it too.
Well, speaking of alcohol, currently we are drinking Mulholland Drive. Snowden, can you tell us what ingredients are involved in the Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of the idea with the podcast. Like Bernie there said, it's starting out as drinking at a bar, so drinking is definitely the theme that we go with. So for this time around, it is, as you said, the Mulholland Drive. Pretty simple one. It is 1.5 parts tequila, 1 part lime juice, and 1 part simple syrup. Put in a shaker, shake it up, put in a glass, and top with just club soda. Nice and simple, and going with, obviously, both of our origins there, California expats, wanted to get something that, really worked as both a California drink and also something in between. Since, obviously, you're Northern California, more the Bay Area. I'm much more Southern California, down in Orange County, actually. Yorba Linda, which even people who live down there don't necessarily know. So, effectively, let's just say Anaheim by Disneyland.
Yeah, I think I've been there before.
Yeah.
Definitely. So make sure that it's shaken, not stirred, with the Mulholland Drive.
I found stirring afterwards is a good idea. The syrup might settle, but that just might be me. The drinks are taking effect already.
Yes, they are.
That just might be me. The syrup seemed to settle. But in any event, yes, definitely shaken is what's primarily on the menu with these.
Great. Well, yeah, so as Snowden said, I'm from the Bay Area, the snobbish part of California, where we adhere to environmental protection and strong liberalism. Very strong liberalism, that's right. We don't like Chick-fil-A because they hate gay people.
And I am from Orange County, seemingly well known across the country as the one weird standout bastion of republicanism in the country. In fact, it made a bunch of headlines, lesser headlines considering how the election went, but in this past election, it did make some headlines as being the first time that the county itself voted not primarily Republican in almost about 100 years, I believe it was.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Something like that.
What do you think causes shift in the political affiliation in your area?
I don't think there really has been much of a shift, to be perfectly honest. I think it was just the Trump effect.
Oh.
I think that really was it for the most part. Because let's face it, I mean, even the last 2 years with Obama in there, Orange County did end up going for McCain and Romney. So, but that I think gives some background on us, where we're coming from in terms of our crazy disassociation with the rest of the country and even our current home city of Denver, in that we're from that wild, insane, wacky, liberal hellhole known as California.
I wouldn't say hellhole, though. I mean, that's a little too strong. There is Disneyland there in Universal Studios.
There is Disneyland, but it's no Disney World.
I would say,
but then again, I mean, Disney World is in Florida and, Florida, so.
I wouldn't speak badly of Florida. I have visited Florida, and Miami's somewhat of a hellhole. The good parts are actually in order to get to the good parts of Miami, you have to go through the ghetto.
Okay.
So they're the very rundown areas of the city before you actually get to the clubs.
Well, there are a lot of places that are like that. This is kind of not related to much of anything except what you just said, but it reminds me even of our city here in Denver. When I first moved in, my very first experience with it was coming in from the interstate, obviously, driving out from California. We turned in because we saw a sign saying Denver, not knowing exactly where we were, just figuring, get off the interstate, get into the city. Put us right onto Federal Boulevard, which for locals would know as the ghetto part of town here.
Okay, so
that was it's just funny you say that about with Miami having to enter into the ghettos to get there. That was my experience moving out here.
What's kind of strange about Colorado is that when people kind of say, this certain areas of ghetto. So especially, when I first came here, people would say Colfax is run down. Don't ever walk around Colfax Avenue. This is so for people who are not from Colorado, Colfax is this long street. I think it's considered the longest street in the United States. It stretches from Denver, Colorado to, I think, like Aurora. It's like, I don't know,
it is a massive
20
street.
miles long. I have no idea.
It's a huge one and like straight all the way.
Politico, don't fact check us on that. So, but it's a massive street. And when I first came here, one of the first things that Denverite had said to me was how rundown Colfax was, and that you shouldn't really, hang around Colfax because that's where all the bums are, and you're going to get in trouble, and you're going to.
It's also where the state capital is.
That's true.
You definitely don't want to be near that.
You definitely don't want to be near that. There's definitely a lot of pickpocketing from the state capital. So.
Mm-hmm. But it is actually the funny thing about that, because I know what you're talking about, and especially with the consideration of Colfax being really run down. There was a bar on Colfax I always used to like to go to, Squire Lounge, which, especially when I was going there, was predominantly known for being a place where homeless people could go to buy heroin and whatnot. This was dive bar, not in a hipster sense. This was dive bar in the sense of people go there to die. And that was this is literally 5-6 blocks away from the Capitol building.
Huh. I mean, were you one of those alcoholics? And
this was when I got my DUI, so yes, I was in a bad place at that time. Okay. So, yes. Granted, though, very nice bar. Happy memories for the most part, except for that, but yes.
So basically, this is free advertisement for the Squire Lounge. If you want to be near heroin addicts and alcoholics, please visit the Squire Lounge on Colfax Avenue. It's a great place.
Not as a joke, I do truly recommend it.
It's the Disneyland of Denver.
Hey, we got to have something.
Okay, well, I guess one of the main themes that we have for our podcast is California. Well, as implied by our title, California Expat Anonymous. And I think one of the things that I guess we want to discuss is, I guess some of the problems within the state. And I think, Snowden, you have certain opinions about California that, ring true to many people. So what are some of the, I guess, issues that you take concern of with California?
The problem is that to me seems like a very general question.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I, to be honest, if I was going to speak completely bluntly and not really trying to make a joke at all, there's most things with California that I find are problems. The vast majority of them. And I'm not speaking out of a sense of absolute ignorance. Yes, I am an expat. I moved out 10 years ago. I was over 10 years ago. I was 18 at the time, had just finished high school, and I knew immediately I wanted to get out of that state. But my entire family still lives there. So I visit routinely a couple times a year for holidays and whatnot. So I'm always going back and still seeing it in that time. And I'm always following news out of there. Really, it's most everything with the state, I think, is fundamentally wrong in a lot of ways. I guess a place to start would be, I mean, we could just look at some of the things that are in the news right now. A lot of the ways that the state, particularly the leadership, Governor Jerry Brown at the moment, is handling crime. They've had a lot of propositions that have gone onto the ballot that have been voted on, as well as a couple of orders that were put out, really trying to unload prisoners from the prison system. And this did originally come from a federal judge ruling that the prison systems were too crowded, it was inhumane, they needed to do something about that. Now, I would say, reasonably speaking, a good idea would be to build more prisons. I mean, try to keep people locked up and to have them serve their sentences. That wasn't the tack that California went with. They started busting people down into local city and county jails, just holding them there, and then releasing them out onto the street. And they've also been releasing a lot of people early with this idea that they're nonviolent offenders. That was the most recent one, the AB 57, I believe it was, bill that was just passed in the most recent election,
Right.
is in particular is one that's already doing that, which is trying to take nonviolent offenders and give them very easy parole. Now, I know that there are going to be plenty of people out there who would hear something like that and think, well, what's wrong with that? They're nonviolent offenders. Why would this be a problem? Let me just start with this. In terms of the California Penal Code, violent offenders, in terms of what they're talking about very legally within the statute, is a very specific set of offenses. When we're talking about nonviolent offenders, that is also legally defined. That's not a common sense term. That's a legally defined terminology. In terms of the California Code, nonviolent offender includes arsonists, assault and battery. It includes certain categories of attempted murder.
Wait,
hit and run.
You're telling me assault and battery is a non-violent.
It's non-violent. There's very specific acts that are considered violent. Kidnapping is considered a violent act, which again, I think some people might find that odd that that would be considered a violent act. I would say it's violent, obviously, but again, it's in terms of legal definitions that have been around for several decades, probably hundreds of years in terms of California's existence. Mm-hmm. There's about 20 of them. I'd have to look it up again to get the exact list of the 20 specific ones that are defined as the violent acts. That's the problem that I'm seeing, is that the state is approaching things in a bad way, and it's routinely lying to its population, realizing that people are looking at things with just basic human common sense. You hear that we're talking about nonviolent offender, you're figuring exactly what you would figure when somebody hears that is that you're talking about like a guy who gets picked up for drug possession or something like that. You're just going to let that guy go. No, they're trying to deplete the prisons as much as possible. That's why you have guys who are known gang members, who are violent offenders, who have really hurt people, who have been attempted murderers. Right. They're let out, and usually often because the way that it works is they're also only looking at their most recent thing that they were picked up for. You know, a guy attempting to break into a car, that's the last thing on his record. That's what they'll look at when they release him from prison, as opposed to the fact that he had an attempted murder charge on him when he was involved in a gang drive-by shooting. That's what happened with Whittier.
I think this is
most recently, where a police officer was shot and killed by an ex-gang member, who the reason he shot the cop at a routine traffic stop was because the guy had the gun in his pocket that he had used to murder his cousin only about the day before. You know, and these are the kind of things that California is experiencing just on that one front.
I think this is somewhat rooted in the deep California liberalism. There's a certain level of compassion that a lot of California liberals would like to impose across the state. And currently, the current narrative right now, at least, I think within the media, is that we are incarcerating too many people. That's what it's like. Well, what are we? The top country in the world in incarceration of our own countrymen. Isn't that right?
America certainly is up there. If we are not the top, I'd say that we're definitely in the top 10. Absolutely.
So do you think there is an argument in that maybe, currently a lot of liberals, and, to put this out there, neither Snowden nor I are, conservatives. We don't really consider ourselves conservatives. I mean, we tend to say, go fuck the Republicans. Like, we don't really adhere to either ideology.
Yeah, I'd say that's absolutely fair. I throw in fuck the Democrats as well.
Yeah, fuck the Democrats.
I primarily consider myself more, maybe a bit of a centrist in a way, but for the most part, I just don't adhere to any one party or the other. I find them equally reprehensible.
Yeah, I would say I'm a centrist as well. And I'm going back to the to the idea of that there's this deep-seated compassion within California. So this sort of compassion that I guess liberals are trying to pose, because that the current narrative is that we're incarcerating too many of our people. There's a certain idea that we should be more lenient towards prisoners. But to play devil's advocate here, like, maybe we're not incarcerating too many people. Maybe a lot of these people deserve to be incarcerated.
Which is an opinion that I would have, but I do understand exactly what you're saying. And frankly, I do understand it from the perspective of those people who would advocate that we are jailing too many people and whatnot, or the sentences are too harsh, or, the prison conditions aren't good enough. All those things I do technically agree with. The problem is that I think that I agree with your last statement. There are some people that do need to go away. They are going to play by the rules of society. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, this might be a bit personal. I have a brother who is currently in prison right now.
Right.
He has been a drug addict since he was a teenager, my younger brother. And he's been in and out of jail for years, in and out of prison for years in California, doing a lot of things, stealing stuff, try to feed his habit and whatnot. He's family. I love him. He's a great guy on a personal level, but he just can't seem to get his shit together. So I would like to make that clear from a standpoint where people would be listening to me. I think some people probably should be put away because you just can't get through to them. They're not doing anything to try to fix themselves. I would include my own brother in that. Right. I don't want to give up on him. And from a personal level, I don't think I ever would. But from a larger society level, he's not helping anybody by being out. I mean, at some point, the state, it would make more sense to just leave him in there.
Well,
and that's kind of the point I want to make. I'm not talking about this from an ignorant perspective of, well, that's easy for you to say if you don't know anything about like what people go through. No, okay, I know what's going on. Right. I got that personal experience to it. I can speak as knowing, again, my own brother.
Well, there's one thing to say that the laws are too lenient. It's another thing to say that we're not doing enough to rehabilitate these people.
That is absolutely true. That is 100% true. That's a different issue.
That is.
I would say that that's a completely different issue. You would need to have a lot of rehabilitation and everything, a lot of those rehabilitation programs in place before you can talk about being lenient on the sentences or the releasing of prisoners.
Right. And so do you feel some sort of, are you concerned of the percentage of Americans being incarcerated right now?
I am, yeah. Yeah, I think obviously we've got too many people that are going into jail, and, well, hell, just in general. We also have a system where in some states, and, not California, let's be perfectly honest about that, but in some states you do have the private prisons, making money basically off of incarcerated people being a commodity. So then there's absolutely no incentive to try to get any kind of rehabilitation in there, to try to actually get people to turn their lives around. If they can get repeat customers, such as it were, so much better for them. No, we definitely do have problems. The thing of it is that I look at it from the perspective of it's not a matter of going one direction or the other. Just because we do have massive problems in terms of the way we administrate prisons and the way that we incarcerate people doesn't mean that we shouldn't be incarcerating people. I don't think it's one or the other. This is where I kind of look at it from the perspective of trying to be a centrist. There's multiple angles, and all of them are valid for specific situations.
Right.
I do try to look at things narrowly. So, yeah, we do have, I would say we do have too many people incarcerated and whatnot. And yeah, we do have a problem with that on a very national level. But at the same time, there are definitely a lot of people that should be incarcerated, should be locked up, should be kept off the streets away from regular people.
Right. I definitely agree. I definitely agree. I think for me, one of the great issues with California is going back to the original question as to what are some of their concerns with the state. I think for me is the issue with great income disparities.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And I guess back in the day, during the 1950s, post World War II, it was pretty reasonable to live back in California. Houses were pretty cheap. There were plentiful of jobs. There were, and I guess in terms of income to housing prices ratio, it was pretty reasonable. These days, I guess the housing issue has definitely got out of hand. I mean, you have places like San Francisco, a city, that prides itself being very liberal, being very compassionate towards its own citizens, and yet the city itself has strong housing regulations, and this impedes the development of housing within the city, and therefore it causes these rise in prices. I mean, oh my God, you have like a studio apartment in San Francisco being sold for $2,100, and this is a non-furnished studio apartment. I mean, no amenities. It's just like this regular studio apartment that's basically, providing the basics for living in San Francisco. And I think one of my worries. So San Francisco is definitely great for tech workers, people who make six figures.
It's great if you're rich.
Right, you're rich. You make six figures, and so you could definitely afford that $1 million house. Given that your partner, your wife or husband, also makes six figures as well, so you are definitely able to afford a house. However, for people, especially like my parents, my father is somewhat of a custodian at the Department of Veterans Affairs. He's a janitor, but I think there's more to his role than just being a janitor as well.
Yeah.
And my mom is a dental assistant, and she probably makes around like $35K. My dad probably makes around $60K. So I guess in total, the household income, their household income would be about, I guess $95K, right? But that's not enough to live in the Bay Area. I mean, you cannot live there. I mean, that's
not really enough to live anywhere outside of the very rural parts of California.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess
that's the thing is that's a very respectable wage in any other state.
It is, and I'm not quite sure just how it came to this. I understand that California is such a hot state. It's been marketed so well across the world. You have movies about California, you have shows about California, right? And everyone thinks it's this sort of paradise. But when it comes to paying for your standard of living within the state, it's quite hellish. You have to pay for like exorbitant rents, not to mention like exorbitant mortgages. It's just
Oh, that's absolutely true. I mean, the irony of it, especially what you had just said with California being so heavily advertised, it's like a great place. People gotta come. People gotta live here. The weather's always wonderful. It's so rich. People make so much money. And yet, you look at where we are right now. The two of us moved out of the state to get here. We are not in anywhere near lots of Californians moving out of California, settling all over the country. Anybody listening to this, I'm sure, could identify that phenomenon locally in their area.
right.
Couldn't
No,
they?
yes, definitely.
Because
and I've
of
had
exactly what you're talking about.
no,
It's too damn expensive to live out there. Anybody who is not making exactly what you said, a double six-figure income,
mhm,
you can't afford it.
you can't. And for me, there's somewhat of a I think it has to do with the sort of liberal policies within the state. Um, having lived in the Bay Area, I was always aware of risk of having the next earthquake, and so we were always prepared for it. And I always knew that there'd be very strong building codes to protect people from a huge earthquake. But that's reasonable, having a building code, so that people are safe. But
Well, let's face it. I mean, it was before our time, but the San Francisco earthquake back in the 80s killed so many people.
it did,
Yeah,
it did, and
that was the wake-up call that put in a lot of those.
and buildings have been reinforced with certain have been reinforced to protect people from earthquakes. But I think it's just the other codes that I just don't understand. There's a certain level of NIMBYism in California that I just don't like. This not in my backyard kind of thing. And I've heard stories in which, especially in San Francisco. So here's one example. I've heard that the UCSF was planning to build a pediatric center somewhere in San Francisco. I know it would cost them millions of dollars, and it would definitely help children. And it was definitely a big project. However, there were a certain number of people who did not like the fact that their view of the bay was going to be blocked by this new building in San Francisco. And as a utilitarian, like,
damn those kids and their diseases.
Yeah, damn those kids and their diseases. I mean,
don't they know how much I pay to see the ocean?
See the ocean, but they've been so because of their concerns of not seeing the bay. That project was abandoned, actually. And I think they had to move their building to another place.
No, that sounds about right. I mean, this is one of those things that really pisses me off about the state in general. It's a large amount of hypocrisy that I see.
There is, yes. I agree.
Massive hypocrisy. You get, the reputation that San Francisco has all across the world, even within the state of California. That massive ultra-liberalism, got to do everything for everybody. Just got to take a lot of money in, give it to the poor, give it to the needy, do all those kind of things. It's not a bad thing. But what you see in practice is exactly what you talked about. Okay, we want to build a new treatment facility for children with diseases. Well, no, do that somewhere else.
Do that somewhere else, yeah.
That's one of those things that I can't stand about it. I mean, in all honesty, I would much rather deal with, the most stereotypical kind of chomping at the bit right-wing nutbag who'd like to just hoard all money and tell poor people to go fuck themselves. Because at the very end of the day, I would respect that guy more because at least he'd be pretty much living what he's talking, you know?
Right.
That's one of those things that I have. Hypocrisy, I find absolutely disgusting.
It is.
Reprehensible in ways that are almost hard to articulate.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy in the Bay Area is pretty endemic, I'd say.
It's endemic and probably also not really even understood by the people practicing it.
Yeah, and
I mean, we can even go back to with you were talking with the housing prices and everything.
mm-hmm.
This idea with especially a lot of the tech industry people wanting to do a lot of social causes, a lot of social investment and everything. And yet they live in a city in an environment with their gated communities and whatnot, where they're pushing people out into the outlying areas, Oakland, for example,
right.
where they have to pay hundreds of dollars to live in a rat-infested, torn-down, old abandoned industrial warehouse where about 40 of them died in a fire.
Oh, yeah.
You remember
Yeah,
the
Oakland
warehouse fire?
warehouse fire. Yeah, I remember that.
Which was a big thing there. And it's one of those things that got me is, how could something like that even happen in the first place? How can there be conditions that would even get people to live in those kind of circumstances?
Well, they were just very desperate.
They're very desperate, and that's one of those things. They're very desperate because of the cost. Nothing's being done to try to, well, everything is being done to put them into that desperation. A lot of the biggest liberal people going on about all their social causes and everything, they're the ones who are doing everything in their power to try to drive up the housing prices to make sure that it's only their kind of people living in a certain area. I mean, to be perfectly honest, when I'm looking at it from the outside, I don't understand how this is in any way different from whites-only neighborhoods in the South in the 1950s or something like that. The only difference is that you're not basing it off of race, you're just basing it off of class and influence.
Mm-hmm.
But how is it, practically speaking, any goddamn different?
Which is kind of funny because I think as you know, I went to school at Stanford, and one of the striking things that I saw was the clear distinction between Palo Alto and East Palo Alto, and all you had to do was, in order to get from Palo Alto, which was this nice, rich community, filled with nice mansions, and I believe Steve Jobs had lived there. I think currently Mark Zuckerberg lives in Palo Alto.
One of his places.
Definitely one of his places. I know he just bought that. He bought that last year, 2 years ago. That San Francisco house.
I just know about the past year. There have been stories about that really nice place in Hawaii that he's got.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Going back to a little tangent on hypocrisy. Him having some statements about, Trump is a terrible person for wanting to build a wall. Meanwhile, Mark Zuckerberg's locked up in all kinds of legal battles because he wants to build a wall around his entire property.
That's true.
Hey, they don't work, but I guess they'll keep out the local riffraff Hawaiians.
Right.
Right.
So if you ever visit Palo Alto, you'll notice that if you just cross, I guess, US 101,
Mm-hmm.
You'll go into East Palo Alto, which is a definitely poorer community. You can see it. It's just so striking. It's a low income neighborhood, and the only thing that separates this and Palo Alto is this freeway.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of that episode in The Simpsons in which Bart runs away, I think during Thanksgiving. Because he had some sort of fight with his family. And he was walking with his dog, Santa's little helper, through this nice neighborhood, and all he had to do was cross these railroad tracks, and he was in Skid Row.
The classic other side of the tracks.
Yeah, other side of the tracks. So you definitely see it in California. And to some degree, I feel like when I think about Southern California, there is this explicit attitude towards gated communities. I mean, like you can explicitly see gated communities in Southern California, right? Like you have gates and whatnot. But to some degree, I feel like Northern California has this somewhat, I guess, insipid, like like just inadvertent sense of gated communities, in that they use housing regulations and zoning laws to separate high income earners from low income earners.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I saw when I was back in Palo Alto.
So help me out here with just real quick with what you had said. The separating of people, the high income earners and the low income earners, like we're talking about.
Yeah.
How does that connect back to the gay communities?
Okay, so I mean, there's an explicit sense of separation. So gay communities, you have a gate, right? It's pretty blatant. There's a gate, and we're separating you from the others, based on this gate, and you can,
gated.
Gated. Sorry, gated, not gay communities.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that makes much more sense.
Gated communities. I'm sorry. Did I? Sorry, the alcohol is affecting my enunciations. Sorry.
Then that makes much more sense, because I'm trying to picture it here. Those rich gay bastards pushing out them poor people.
Those gay bastards. Those.
Me and Bruce, we don't have any kids, and we just make all the income together.
That's right.
Get out of here, you brothers.
Get out of here. Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, that makes much more sense, but it was funnier in my mind.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure how it extrapolated like gay communities in Southern California to Northern California. gay communities. They in Southern California, damn it, like it's much warmer there, so they tend to be a little better barebacking, I guess. I have no idea.
Who knows about?
Who knows?
I just know that ultimately, let's face it here, if you were going to talk about gay communities in general, we're talking about San Francisco, California, you get Hollywood and whatnot. It's not something that's impossible to be referring to.
Right, yeah. No. So I guess, well, going back.
Okay, we got off.
Yeah, I know we did. But going back, I feel like there's a certain like cynical ulterior motive with all these strong regulations and laws within Northern California. Like you can't build land here, you can't build land there, you can't build here, and therefore, there's a lack of development and change within Northern California neighborhoods. And that's why there seems to be a strong disparity within the Bay Area, not to mention California.
Yeah.
All of California.
That's absolutely the case. I mean,
right.
One of those big things that's the problem with the entire state is that it seems to be, it really does seem to be actively going out of its way with its policies to drive out the middle class entirely.
No, yes, exactly.
To set it up with only an elite, super rich, and then massively poor underclass of people working in service.
Right, and so one of the problems that I have, so continuing from your point, is the gas laws. So we live in Colorado. Both you and I.
Yeah.
And we understand that, I guess per gallon, it's about, I guess, $2 for gas. Is that right?
This
I guess
$2
or
$2.11. About $2.11, I believe it was.
If you go to California, it's around $2.75, maybe $2.50.
And to be perfectly honest, that's astounding that it's gotten that low.
Or $2
years ago, it was up.
Yeah.
It had been passing $4, and that was normal for the period.
Well, the reason why gas in California is so it's more expensive. It's not so expensive, but it's definitely getting gas there is one
far more expensive than anywhere else.
Anywhere else is because this energy regulation that requires that gas stations sell a more refined gasoline.
It's their own particular standard of gasoline blend.
Now,
that
right.
is only required within the state of California.
Within the state of California. Now, I understand that LA is threatened by smog, right? So I know that smog is such a
yeah, it's still there to an extent, but I mean, let's be perfectly honest, it ain't like it was in the 70s.
No, it wasn't. Especially because cars have become more efficient with consuming gas.
Yeah.
But to me, it just doesn't make sense why so much of our middle class is within California, and they have required that all gas stations. And mind you, a lot of middle class Californians depend on cars, right? Like there's massively so, especially in Southern California.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me why the state is requiring a more refined gas. Like I think it's like 89 at the minimum, like an 89 I guess wherever you see 89 refined gas or something in California.
I'm not entirely certain of the specifics.
And this requires more middle income families to pay more out of their pocket towards transportation.
Middle and low, yeah.
Middle and low, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Anybody who might have to use a vehicle, they're going to be paying more.
Right, and when you think about it, a lot of the California elites, now that Tesla is in the car market, more of them are driving these electric cars, and they don't have to depend on gasoline anymore.
Not as much, no.
Not as much.
No.
I mean, definitely, if you are a middle income earner, I mean, you could probably pay for Tesla, but it's definitely going to.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but there's so many problems with that. One, Tesla's really not practical for, I would say, a family.
No.
I'm not even sure if they make like a Tesla minivan or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have a family with more than 2 kids, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to use that car.
They've come out with a new model that's a little bigger than their regular sedan.
Maybe so, but can it go further than 100 miles on a single charge?
I'm not quite sure actually. So
because I mean, a bigger family here having a car. If you are in a position to be able to indulge in the luxury of a vacation of any kind, family like that ain't gonna fly.
No,
they're not gonna fly because that's way too expensive. You're gonna drive in a car.
There's a reason why we decided to adopt gasoline cars in the first place 100 years ago, because I think there was a certain level of greater efficiency with gasoline consuming cars.
I suppose
because
Stanley Steamer,
right, yeah,
it's coal driven.
Because if you look at the pioneering cars back 100 years ago, there were both gas cars and electric cars, but I think due to economic reasons, we decided to adopt the gas car and became the car of choice for many consumers.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's enough of our California ranting, actually.
But at least for right now, I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty that'll be up in the future. I mean, hell, like when we started this originally, you asked me about problems in it. We barely scratched on it.
I think we have. Yeah, we haven't really.
We still got things to talk about, like the bankrupted cities, pensions for public workers, the tax rates in general. Oh, we could go on. But we'll save it.
So, welcome back, everyone. I think we took a little break there.
Had to get a refill and also drink what we already had.
Oh, the refill. Speaking of which, I don't have my glass. Where's my glass?
Yeah, that would be important.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I'm reaching for my mug here, actually. It's not
really a cocktail glass that we have. No, we are drinking out of beer steins.
This is the
Not
classiest way to drink cocktails, apparently.
the absolute classiest way.
Yes.
Well, if you define classiness by effectiveness.
Yeah. Well, I guess we were also discussing the distinction between gay communities and gated communities.
Yes.
I think the one thing at issue with both is, is there a back door?
That would be important to both of them.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. Definitely. Is there a back door in the gay community? Yes. Yeah.
Their primary concern. Although I suppose whether or not there is one, the answer would be looked at differently between the two.
Definitely. I mean, there's a certain level of insertion, I guess, with one.
Yeah.
Insertion, if that's the right word. Yeah, it's and there's a certain level of bliss when you enter through the back door.
Absolutely.
No.
Because as we all know, people in gated communities, they love having people come in uninvited through the holes in the security apparatus.
No, they love it. They do love it.
That's why you've got the guy at the front checking names and everything, because secretly they all want that mysterious person to come in.
Oh yes, that security guard. Sometimes he likes to bend down and let's see if someone from behind the community, like from behind, can reach in and just
say hello.
Say hello. Definitely, it's having been in one of those two communities,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely understand the benefits of having a back door.
Of course. Hey, and speaking of gay and gated communities, how about Trump's speech to Congress?
That's a very interesting segue. I'm not sure how.
I think it's probably the most appropriate segue we could possibly have.
So you're saying that Trump was able to infiltrate the Republican Party through the back door?
Well, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the best way to look at it. Trump was able to insert himself into the Republican Party through the back door.
Absolutely.
It was a backdoor policy. Yeah.
Got him in.
It's what got him in. What got him in, protected or not. I can tell right away that this conversation has definitely degenerated into high school jokes.
Of course, but it's also
sex jokes.
Right into the place where we wanted it to be originally.
That's right. Okay. So this week, Trump spoke to Congress outlining his agenda to the nation.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, from my perspective, I thought because we had such a low bar for him. I know you voted for him.
Yep.
I didn't vote for him, but we can both agree that we definitely thought he was somewhat neurotic and narcissistic, as well as...
That's all putting it politely.
Politely.
I voted for him, and I would still say he's a complete gibbering lunatic.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we had this low bar for Trump, but because of that, for some reason I thought, actually, I actually thought that he hit a home run with his speech, and mainly maybe because of that low bar we had of him. But yeah. I thought he was very direct. He had good points, although I did not agree with him 100%. But he was a great communicator. He was pretty good, but who cannot be if you have a prompter in front of you?
Well, he usually eschews the prompter, so
Yeah.
him actually taking advantage of it, giving a speech that people I think pretty universally agree was presidential in tone and whatnot.
Right.
What I honestly find the most interesting about the speech is not really any of the content, just the way that he delivered it. Being presidential, being even in tone, somebody who seems like they actually should be in the office of the presidency. And that's what people are responding to. Because it's not just you and me. It's I've seen polls saying well over 80% of people said that the speech was delivered very well. It was a good speech, and you could even tell with the way that Congress themselves reacted to it. You had a lot of applause from both sides of the aisle. What I find fascinating about all this is that to me, the speech was largely uninteresting to me, because as a Trump voter, I've been paying a bit more. Well, it's not fair to say that I've been paying more attention to what he's been saying, but I guess I've been a bit more receptive to it, obviously. And what I took away from it is that with his speech, there was almost nothing new that was in there. Almost all of it is pretty much what he's been saying for the past year. The only new things that were in there that I took away from it is his plans to create the new office to handle victims of illegal alien crimes, the one he called Voice, proverbially. And he also had the segment about the Navy SEAL who was killed in Yemen. The moment that had all the applause, that really long moment of applause. Beyond that, though, that's what I found most interesting about it in terms of thinking about the speech and hearing about the reactions after the fact. There really wasn't anything new in there. And even the establishment of Voice, that's just more a particular. That's not anything new in terms of what he always said he would want to do in terms of going in that direction. So I think what I would really like to hear from you in particular is, in some ways, do you think it's more important that his tone and presentation be more presidential, and that might be more important, versus the content of what he's actually saying? Because that's again, to reiterate, the content of what he's saying really hasn't changed in any way, but people seem more receptive because he's not being bellicose about it.
During the campaign, I think one of the major concerns why a lot of people didn't vote for Trump was basically because of his erratic personality. And it wasn't very packaged properly. I mean, there's certain things that I believe he was right about. That our NATO allies aren't really paying their fair share. We've been bearing the brunt of the NATO budget for a very long time. I understand the issue of immigration. I understand the issue of nationalism. I think this country has the right to kick out whoever it wants to kick out, so long as they're not citizens. I mean, citizens are protected under the Constitution, and if you're not legally, you don't legally reside within the United States, there's definitely risk of you being kicked out because you don't have the right papers. And I totally agree with that. I believe there's a certain sense of a strong sense of nationalism that I agree with Trump. NATO allies not really bearing their doing their fair share, and that radical Islam needs to be addressed. But the way that he conveyed that during the election made it sound so I don't know. I guess the good word is deplorable. I mean, it's just the way he packaged it. And for me, which was just so weird, is that he's a businessman. And for some reason, he couldn't really market these ideas very well. People were able to see through what he was saying, understanding the basic, ideas that he was trying to convey. And yet, I mean, it took some strength, like some mental strength in doing so, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you had to kind of circumvent what he was saying to understand what he was actually saying during the election.
Well, something that I had read in an article, and I can't remember who wrote it or even what newspaper. It was back in mid-November, shortly after Vietnam. But it was the perfect line that I think sums up most everything about the election, and really sums up very well what you had just said there, especially in terms of like the marketing angle, like who he was marketing to. He was always marketing towards a base, and he's in the White House now, so it clearly worked.
It did,
on the group of people
to
he
his
was
credit.
trying to sell.
To his credit, yeah.
And the specific line in the article that I had read that really summed up a lot, because they were trying to go into analysis on how is it exactly that Trump managed to win. Their specific statement, the quick and easy breakdown of it, was people who support Trump never took him literally, but always took him seriously. The media and people who were against Trump always took him literally, never took him seriously.
I think that's what Peter Thiel said, right?
I can't remember the name.
I think it was Peter Thiel.
If that's the name, then that's it. But but I mean, that I think is a really profound interpretation of it, because exactly like what you were saying with having to kind of parse through it. Even I was in this circumstance where occasionally I would just be confused, like why people were freaking out over something that he said. To me, I could interpret it as a joke, or I could very easily get around like if you look at the words literally, okay, I get what you're talking. I get where it's a problem, but I never really had that problem with him. I could get more the idea of, again, the idea he's trying to convey.
Right. To be frank, I voted for Hillary Clinton, thinking that reluctantly. The last election was definitely a freak show. It was. You had this, reality TV star, who became the lead candidate for one political party.
And then you had Trump.
That's right. and then you had, this ghost of the Democrat Party who just kept lingering on, after having failed to clinch the Democratic presidential candidacy in 2008.
Pushed out by Obama. When clearly the party wanted somebody different from her, but the party itself wanted her. They
wanted her. I know, to be frank, I didn't really like Bernie Sanders. I could understand his appeal to masses of people because he was very sincere. Whatever he said, he's been very consistent. What he had said last year during the election is the same thing he would have said back in the 1970s. Like, it's exactly the same thing. He's a relic. You just take a snapshot of what he said. It's just exactly the same thing years ago.
No, exactly. It doesn't really change.
It doesn't change at all.
And that's one of those things where, honestly, if it had come down to where it was Bernie Sanders versus Trump in the general election, I may have voted for Bernie Sanders. Just in the sense that, at the very least, Sanders would have had some political experience. Ultimately, my biggest thing, especially with Trump, is I wanted the outsider. I wanted somebody who wasn't the main party.
What's kind of funny is that, so you voted for Trump, I voted for Clinton.
Yeah.
Had Bernie Sanders ran against Trump, having clinched the Democratic presidential candidacy, I would have voted for Trump because I thought Sanders was too crazy.
Oh, Sanders, I think, is terrifying.
I mean,
I think he's even more terrifying than Trump. But honestly, when I say that, I probably would have gone with Bernie, mostly based off of who knows? It may have gone a different way, mostly based off of the debates.
Mm.
Trump did not endear himself to me during those debates,
No.
which was interesting because I've spoken to other people who were always Trump supporters. They loved how he handled himself in those 3 debates. They really thought he did a good job, and I could only sit there and wonder, what the hell debate did you see? Because I saw a gibbering lunatic who doesn't know his ass from his head.
Right.
Which was really what everybody was saying about him, but ultimately I still went with him because, frankly, that part of it didn't really matter to me.
Well,
well, at the end of it, I mostly went with the protest vote.
Well, I mean, I think in the end, if Bernie had, ran against Trump, I think either would have been a protest vote anyway. I mean,
exactly.
It's just.
That's the thing. To me, it wouldn't have really mattered very much which one I would have voted for, either Bernie or Trump, because if it came down to a runoff between the two, I would have been completely satisfied, and I wouldn't have really cared ultimately. It would have been a complete blowout on both sides, with basically the people saying, even at the earliest stages, we don't like you guys as the party, and you are picks with the party.
Right. Well, just to clarify my standpoint on why I would have voted for Trump, as opposed to Bernie, is because I've listened and read Bernie's policies, and a lot of the major topics he was trying to cover were college debt, as well as healthcare, and this was reported in the New York Times, and apparently, were Bernie to implement his policies, we would be like, we would need to pay like $15 trillion a year, for his
just an
projects.
Ungodly amount of money.
Ungodly amount, and that would bankrupt the whole country. I mean, again, Politico or whoever fact checkers, that number, it's kind of queasy, but you get my point.
It basically just would have been a ridiculous, ungodly amount. Yeah.
It's ungodly amount, so that's why I thought it was more reasonable to. That's what I would think it would have been more reasonable to vote for Trump as opposed to Bernie.
Yeah, ultimately, I think for me is that I think I would have been less worried about Bernie in the sense that I just would figure Congress and the Senate wouldn't allow Bernie to do most of that stuff. They would see the writing on the wall with the massive costs and everything, and just wouldn't allow him to have those kind of things. I do believe in the checks and balances of the system, which is another reason why I don't really have the same kind of concern that some people have over Trump. I want to see a lot of what he says come to pass. I'm not sure how much of it will be able to come to pass. Although, to be perfectly honest, when it really comes down to it, I did not for one moment think that the House and the Senate was going to flip Republican during the election at the same time. So there's a wrinkle in reality on the whole thing.
But
that notwithstanding,
this was definitely a blowout for the Republicans. I mean, this was so surprising. I mean, this was very shocking. It was very shocking to see that the day after November 9th, to see that the Republicans won both the Senate and the House of Representatives, as well as the presidency. And by having won the presidency as well, I mean, they basically won the judiciary. Too. Like it was a huge win. I mean, just amazing. Like, I'm still shocked about it because he had this narrative within the media. He had this media within the narrative. He had this narrative within the media back, before November 9th, that the Republicans would suffer such a severe loss because of things that Trump had said, that he was this deplorable maniac who sexually preys on women.
Which was really about the only thing that they kept going to, just the personal attacks, really. Right. Which I think did them no favors. They wanted to keep going on the personal attacks, which in my mind, really didn't have very much meat in them in the first place. And they never really got him on any of the issues because they didn't believe his issues were worth discussing.
Right. And
that's where I think really Hillary and the Democrats lost more than anything else. In some ways, it's less that Trump won and more that Hillary and the Democrats lost.
They did.
Because it was their election to lose more than it was Trump's to win.
They lost Wisconsin. They lost Minnesota. They lost Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, massively, which I don't know when that's happened before.
It's been years. I think it was since George H.W. Bush, I think.
So about,
probably, I think.
20, 30 years.
Maybe. Well, I don't know. I have to check this out when Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the point is they did themselves no favors, especially with what you had said with the deplorable. I mean, that classic line, the Hillary Clinton's the basket of deplorables and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Just not wanting to engage with the other side, not wanting to recognize that there is a genuine anger there, that there is a lot of discontent, that there are people who are pissed off and who are looking for anything, who, even if you want to go with your angle of or not yours personally, but I mean like the Democratic Party and whatnot, their angle of Trump is just a big orange-haired clown and everything. Mm-hmm. Okay, he is, but obviously he's resonating with people for something that's bigger than that.
Right.
You have to address that. You can think that these people are all crazy and idiots, but there's enough of them now, and it's reaching that point where you can't ignore it and just write them off. You have to try to engage. You have to try to communicate. You have to do something. They never did.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately how it broke down. Is I think in many ways there had to have been a lot of voters, particularly with Trump, who went with him possibly less because of his issues and what he said, and more that they felt that there was no alternative. That they were so alienated, at least on this side, there's somebody who's at least pretending to pay attention to us.
Yeah, and I think, I think you noticed that I just recently visited Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Actually, you know me. I attended one gay bar, this one gay club, and I was actually talking to this guy, It's kind of weird, but I
talking to a guy in a gay bar.
No, that's just weird. No, but I don't want to disparage him. But he had camo. He looked like one of the cast of Duck Dynasty.
It is Missouri.
It is. Well, yeah, that's right. But he was so friendly, and we had this great discussion over why he voted for Trump.
Yeah,
and it was basically that, because he felt that the elites had alienated a certain group of people within the United States, and they weren't listening to them. They weren't listening to them at all. I mean, you have people who, I guess, due to NAFTA, and not just NAFTA, but to global trade in general. I mean, in the past 30 years or so, we have experienced one of the greatest changes since the Industrial Revolution, which is globalization.
The globalization it's going to be looked back on as the Industrial Revolution. The massive change and, the demarcation point of human history. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we tend to discuss changes in China and India and how they're being affected by globalization. But at the same time, globalization is within our own backyards. I mean, we have had small towns deeply affected by NAFTA, the deregulation of industry. Mm-hmm. You see that in Michigan, Detroit, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and especially Pennsylvania, where they needed to compete against other companies residing in countries abroad.
Well, it's the American worker is now competing on a global stage against the Chinese, the Indians, right. Africans, really anybody on the planet. And that's the problem is that we've set up for ourselves a country where we do have a standard of living. And I don't think that's a bad thing that we have a good standard of living. It takes more money to live up to that. What should be the goal is that everybody else should be raised up to this level But that's not what's happening.
Mhm.
Ultimately, what this really has in real practical effects is that the Americans are being dragged down to the level of the poor Chinese, Indians, anybody else, because that's where all the businesses are going to work for them to employ those people. And an American can't compete by wanting an American wage,
Mhm.
which is, yeah, that's the practical effect of what you're seeing.
See, I understand. No, I really understand the major concerns with the flight of jobs,
Mhm.
going overseas. But but I think one of the major um, reasons why a lot of these jobs decreased in those states was because of technology.
It's a
Things
part of
have
it.
definitely gotten more automated. I think,
It's a part of it, but then
but
again, here's the thing: is technology isn't the only all of it. So I think part of the problem is that we could still have some of this stuff here, and yes, it's going to be a lot more automated. There's going to be a lot more machines and whatnot. You can still have whatever human jobs are available in the United States if we're going to take globalism and put it to its logical outcome, which is that everybody on the globe is working on an even playing field.
right.
That I think is part of the problem. I mean, you could never have a company like Foxconn in America because the working conditions that they have and the wages that they make, it would be illegal. It would be shut down immediately.
Yes, it would be illegal.
But hell, everybody, reach into your pocket right now. Every single person that's listening to this, that's out there, you're probably listening to this right now on a fucking smartphone. Probably half of the components in there, if not the whole thing, came out of the Foxconn plant in China. And the only reason that you're able to buy it for such a cheap price is because those people are basically fucking slaves.
Well,
For the cheap prices that they work for. And that's the thing, is like the reason companies like Apple can get away with that, because of the globalization stuff.
well, I wouldn't say it's slavery because they do have a wage. It's to us,
Yeah,
it is
because they
but
do
to
have
us,
a
it's
wage. But I mean, there's
to,
the thing, even black people got food.
well,
That's
yes.
technically a wage.
No, not necessarily, because
I don't think it really counts when you're talking
no,
about a guy making
I mean
$30 a month.
the standard of living in China is different from that of the United States.
But if
You
we're
can
going to
pay
be,
for food more cheaply and pay for housing more cheaply in China. There's a difference. I mean, you can even
there is a difference.
you can
There's
be
also
probably
a difference.
more content.
There's also a difference in the sense that that plant, they put up nets around the building to keep the bodies from landing on the concrete outside, because people are jumping off that thing to kill themselves. They're so overstressed.
Well, but that's another issue. That's another issue. That there's
Isn't
a
that the
difference.
main issue? That they're
Well,
so overworked?
they're so
You're saying it's not
overworked.
like slaves. There's more to being a slave than than having a wage.
No, I think that our issue was whether
The Romans had
whether
slaves, and those
whether the
slaves got
wage
pretty good prices. I mean, got pretty good wages and could apply for
no
Roman citizenship.
whether the wage is adequate enough for them. There's a I mean there's a we need to distinguish the argument over, if they're being overworked, over are they being paid well. And I think, to play devil's advocate, that they're paid okay. I mean, because of the because of the conditions and standard of living within China. You can't just pull everyone up to the American standard of living. There's a difference. There's a major difference. That's why a lot of these companies go overseas. Well, to say this word, to exploit this wage disparity.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it.
Exactly.
So I guess we're agreeing while at the same time completely disagreeing in the ultimate point.
Well, yeah.
Because I look at it as they're going over there and exploiting foreign workers because they don't want to put up with the.
But a lot of these workers were agrarian, would have been agrarian workers, and they would have been paid more poorly had they not gone to these factories. There's, I mean, to think of this from a higher level, um, we've had this experience before in the United States, you know, during the Industrial Revolution, where we had people, you know, coming from you know, you know, agrarian society, moving into the city so that they can get, you know, a better job. Well, not a better job. Well, I mean, it's definitely a better job.
Well, that's why they would have come. So yeah.
They wouldn't have to work in the sun. They would go to the factories and be better paid than they had, you know, than they would have, you know, than they uh, where they had been like a farmer, you know, harvesting, you know, wheat or whatever. China's basically experiencing the same thing. They're trying to catch up, and right now they're at the stage where America was in the late 19th century. Um, I mean, it's difficult because a lot of these. I mean, I mean, I don't know. It's just that I feel like because we live in a developed country, we don't really understand the I guess the actual conditions of developing countries.
You're right about that. I certainly wouldn't be able to speak from anybody from a developing country, obviously. But what I could speak to, and where I think we've probably meandered a little too far from, would be like that guy in Camo who you were talking about that you spoke to in Kansas City,
that's right.
with how these changes and whatnot, and giving the jobs to the would have been rural third world worker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how is that affecting our people here?
No, I mean it's definitely a loss for us to have one job move to another country, but at the same time, I think there is something beneficial to us in moving a low-skilled working job from this country to another country, in that we're helping that country develop its own economy and um, therefore helping to stabilize the country itself because of the growth in wealth um, from introducing from transferring that job from the United States to Mexico. I mean, it's not necessarily one job that we're transferring. For every job that we have transferred from the United States, we have introduced probably 5 jobs in Mexico or 5 jobs in China because of the low wages.
At the cost of employment in this country.
Yes, at the cost of employment.
People losing their livelihoods, people losing their ability to pay for their housing, provide for their families.
Right.
I don't see the benefit. And call me selfish, I care far more about the individual American than I do about those 5 foreign workers.
Right. No, and I agree. And I'm just playing devil's
advocate. I do consider myself
here.
A nationalist in that regard.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to understand the globalist perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is something to say about the benefits of outsourcing, because I mean the thing is that, you know, by having transferred those jobs. I mean, the thing is that a lot of these jobs have been lost. Is really not because of outsourcing. It's really technology. I don't really think we can get these jobs back.
Well, that's the thing, is I don't think it is technology, because people say that, and yes, there is a massive component to that. The problem is that if it was purely technology, the factories and whatnot would still be in this country. And you'd be paying American workers, programmers, engineers, and whatnot to maintain the machines, to put them in place. If it was purely technology, then the location in the planet wouldn't matter. You already had the land and the infrastructure in here, and you're already close to where your intended customers are. So why would you move overseas to build entirely new factories and then incur all kinds of import costs, shipping costs, moving them across the ocean, your finalized goods and everything? If it was purely technology, and we're talking about like robotics or something like that in the terms of manufacturing of physical goods, if it was purely that, why do we not have those kind of factories in this country? Why are the factories closing in this country, moving overseas? If it's just about the robots and the technology and whatnot, you'd have no reason to go anywhere else on the planet. It's all the same.
It's all about cost efficiency, right? So all corporations are heading towards, trying to get as, much of a profit out of such a low cost, right? So like as low cost as possible.
Pretty much standard business 101.
So either they send their jobs overseas, for lower wages, or they automate it.
But that's exactly what you're talking. Okay, so that's what we're talking about then. So it's not the technology. It is about the prices and everything.
Right.
It's not a matter of it being, because people have been saying this, and this is what I'm getting at. What is getting to me is where a lot of people are saying like, okay, well, a lot of the jobs were lost because of the lower wages and everything overseas is because of the technology. No, it is the lower wages because what you just said, they're not implementing the technology because they could get the lower wages otherwise. If they were forced into a position where it was everybody across the board is in an equal position, you're either going to go human or automated, then we could be talking about that. Then that would be the conversation we'd be having. That's not where we are, and that's not what is happening. That's why, to me personally, it really pisses me off when I'm hearing people always talking about the technology, the automation and whatnot, as if that's what's going on. It's not what is going on. It's possible. It's certainly there and could be happening, but it's a false argument because it's not really what is going on. The jobs aren't going overseas because it's cheaper to implement robots in China. No, it's because the Chinese workers are cheaper. We're still talking about one-to-one human beings. And all things being equal, Chinese worker, American worker, they could do the same job.
They could do the same job, but the thing is that why a lot of our products these days are very cheap. So a lot of Americans go Walmart, Target, is mainly because they want cheap goods.
In some ways, it's because they need cheap goods.
Cheap goods, and corporations are answering to that. And so corporations are being incented to cut costs, be more cost efficient. And so in order to do that, either they go towards automation or they ship jobs overseas. And it's really a vicious cycle, and that's I guess what I'm trying to head towards is that you have all these people who want cheap goods. Well, how can they get cheap goods? Well, the corporations need to be more cost efficient. And so they need to either automate the jobs or ship the jobs overseas. And by doing so, they're producing cheap goods. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is a vicious cycle. But it's also just massively profit-driven in ways that don't make any sense. A lot of this is driven by the fact that most of these companies, it's considered a bad year if you turn a profit that's less than the profit that you had the previous year. They're always striving to get greater and greater profit. And look, I'm not trying to talk about, I don't want to come across here like I'm a Bernie Sanders or a socialist or something like that. No, people can be making a lot of money. I don't have any problem with that. What I'm saying is that the way that we approach things, and maybe where we should be taking a look at it, is in terms of our Wall Street and investment and whatnot. Our models don't make really any sense. If you're making a profit, then that's good. Who cares if it was technically a little less than the year previously? A company like Apple, for example, at the moment, they're basically just dominating everything that they do. But where else could they reasonably go? How much more profit could they get? Every year that they release a new device or something like that, people are lined up for blocks all around the place to buy it. But at some point, don't you just reach a peak of what you can be doing? I mean, you get those same people to come in and buy your stuff every single year. Eventually, that's everybody that you're going to get in terms of the market share.
Mm-hmm.
But you dominate it, you own it. So why is it a problem that you might technically make a couple pennies less profit the next year? The reason I'm bringing them up specifically is because they're trying to shore up the gap by obviously putting all of their money into Ireland, the massive tax haven.
Yeah.
So they basically pay nothing on the profit. And then they're just sitting on billions and billions of dollars that they don't even have any idea what to do with. It's not even going into being reinvested in research and development or to create new products or anything like that. It's just they're sitting on it. I mean, it's not even that they're trying to be fiscally solvent, which I think was kind of the argument that you're making. They got plenty of goddamn money. They're making plenty of goddamn money. Even if they got no profit for years now, the money that they have, they could live on.
But we're talking about an outlier. We're talking about Apple. I mean, Apple is such. I mean, it's a huge outlier. I mean, it's the most successful.
It is, but I don't think
high-tech company.
Yes,
but I don't. We're talking about on average companies who have had to make decisions whether they had to automate or move jobs overseas.
But there's the problem. There's the problem right there is that in that circumstance, I don't think Apple is the outlier. I think it's the standard. Because when you're talking about companies that are capable of going overseas on a massive scale like that, you're talking about these massive, incredibly successful companies like Apple. They're the only ones with that option. I work for a small company. We only operate out of Denver. We are a corporation. We're incorporated. Legally, we're a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't go overseas to find somebody else to replace me. They couldn't go out of state and do it. It's a small company. That international option is not there. You have to be something on the level of Apple for that to even be something you could do in the first place. So I don't think they're the outlier here. I think that, like I said, I think they're the standard of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, who else would be able to do something like that? We're going to be talking about anything that is massively known. Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Apple, Coca-Cola. To a tiny extent, maybe McDonald's. Not necessarily McDonald's. They have a different business model. But you see what I'm saying. The biggest companies that are on the planet.
After having drunk a bit, I do feel hungry for McDonald's right now.
Oh, I could go for some
I
as
could
well.
go for something right
Absolutely.
now, but sorry.
Yeah, a couple of cheeseburgers and chicken nuggets and whatnot. Yes.
But yeah, to your point, no, I understand your concern. I think one of my major concerns with corporations these days is how they use their profit. The ideal for the usage of profit is, you either pay it out as like dividends, or you put it back into the company. You use it for investment, for something, so that your company could grow, to expand, or horizontally or vertically.
I mean, as far as I would know, reinvestment in your company is the only thing that makes any sense to me.
That makes much more sense.
I mean, I don't know really what else you would be using it for. I mean, we're not living in some kind of feudal era where just hoarding it makes any kind of sense.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, from a large company like that, diversify, probably find some other markets that you could do. Research and development, entirely new divisions that don't even have anything to do with the original parent company.
Right.
I mean, I can see all of that.
I think.
And hopefully all of that would translate into, more jobs, more opportunities for individual people. I'm not like anti-corporate or anything. What I don't like is we seem to be locked into kind of an outmoded view of investing in a way, where market share and stock prices are all tied into just the profit that you post each year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what's going to determine your stock prices, which in turn dominates your viability as a company. We're seeing a return back into like the 90s internet .com bubble
Mm-hmm.
with all of the phone app corporations that are out there. Snapchat doesn't make any
Facebook.
money. Facebook now makes some money,
Makes
but
some
originally,
money, but
even when it first went public, it didn't make any money. It was losing it like crazy. You've got Uber and Lyft, which I was actually stunned to find out they don't make any money. They're living entirely off of the venture capital they've got, because the main reason that they're able to compete with taxis is because their prices are artificially low. They don't make any profit based off of those prices. They're just trying to price out taxi cabs. So that way, then they're the only game in town, and then they can go back up to what the taxis were, and who's going to compete? You know?
Right.
I mean, that's one of those problems, is that it's not based off of necessarily viability or sense. It's just background numbers, background number games.
I mean, it's. I mean, to some degree, what a lot of these companies are doing is capitalism 101. It's really trying to outcompete their rivals. I think for me, I think the major concern with all this profit is how companies go about in achieving them. I think right now, we have historic low interest rates, right? So pretty low.
You're talking about like housing and whatnot, or just
no,
in general bank loans?
No, general bank loans, right? So investments. I mean, we've heard stories of the Fed chair, saying that she may hike up interest rates because they've been too low. So currently, if I were a company, I would take out loans to buy more stock, because there's such a low cost to incurring debt right now, and then buy as much stock as possible to get enough equity so that you eventually could pay off that loan pretty easily.
That's good for a company.
It is good for a company.
I mean, ultimately, I don't.
But basically, these loans right now are not being used to invest in the future. They're not being used for workers, for stakeholders of the company.
Well, that's the thing.
Used for equity, strictly for equity.
Yeah, I would figure, particularly when we're talking about loan rates and whatnot. I mean, wouldn't the real idea behind that be that you're trying to encourage people to start a business? Mm-hmm. You're trying to encourage people to take out a loan in order to be able to start a business, so they can have some initial capital to whatever it is that they need, whatever it is that it is for whatever kind of business that they're trying to do. Is that not the idea behind trying to have lower rates on loans?
That was why the interest rates were pegged low. Is so that we could stimulate the economy, so that people could take out loans and create their own businesses. But it seemed that a lot of the already existing corporations took advantage of the low interest rates, and I think this is pretty much why we see such a high boom in the indexes. So we see the Dow Jones or S&P 500 hitting 2,100 or 21,000 points.
Yeah, who was that?
Historic. Yeah.
Wasn't it 22?
I'm not sure, actually.
Either way, it was a record.
But yeah, it seems like the issue with income disparity right now is really how much equity you hold as opposed to how much you don't hold it.
Which is all well and good for the businesses, but they're able to get to those levels because they're effectively screwing over the regular American worker. You know,
Right.
I mean, you're not really seeing any of that translate into any kind of benefits for people on the ground.
Right.
Is ultimately what I think is the biggest problem. That's where a lot of the anger and discontentment is coming from. That's ultimately where a guy like Trump not only became a candidate, managed to win. You know? You've got that much dissatisfaction and discontentment on the lower levels because people just aren't seeing any kind of benefit.
No. Yeah, I agree. We just finished here. It's already 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I mean,
that can work then.
I'll definitely edit. I'll edit this out, but.
Oh no, obviously, of course, yeah.
But I think we need to have some last thoughts.
Yeah, we can go. We can have a closing bit. Brainstorm that. We talked about the intro. Which works that well. What would be kind of a closing bit? I guess kind of a summation or something. Or probably just kind of like what would fit with the theme, especially as I noticed that
drive.
No, even more than that. I think what can work is like an admission of where we've gone. Like I think we started going pretty quick. We got slower in our speaking as it went along.
Yeah.
So we can even acknowledge that as like, so we're definitely slowing down and having about 3 of these so far, an equivalent of 9 shots.
Yes, I have to
It
say
might
that.
be time to turn in before we just start giving the rest of this podcast as.
Yeah, we can definitely say that. So we've had, I guess we've pretty much had 3 mugs of your Mulholland Drive right now.
Yeah, 3 mugs of the Mulholland Drive, which I think translates out to an equivalency of approximately 9 shots.
9 shots.
Not counting the actual shot we had.
Oh, that's right.
The pump at the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, it might be a good idea to kind of close it up and give final thoughts. Final thoughts before we have more instances of talking about final thoughts. And ultimately, this
final thoughts.
Exactly. And ultimately, this could just degenerate into Trump politics. Nah, I'm not drinking officers.
What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, that's right. Tunnel dump. Tunnel dump is so, I don't know. Well, okay.
This has got to be interesting hearing drunk people trying to pretend to be drunk.
Yes.
This is meta on a level that I can't comprehend.
This is drunkception right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is, we're trying to close out our thoughts, and it's been kind of difficult to.
I think part of the difficulty is
to collect them.
Absolutely. I think part of the difficulty has been we have been a little bit meandering with our thoughts, but that was always going to be the case with this, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was always the case with this, actually. Again, we were trying to simulate our conversations that we had previously at a nearby bar. And we thought, if this could be podcastable, if that's a word. We decided to record it.
Ultimately, just doing the same thing we always did. Start talking, just go in a direction, see where it goes, and record it while we do it.
But I guess to conclude, I think with our, to discuss
to sum up.
To sum up, the second half of this podcast, which was really about if Trump was presidential enough.
That's where it started.
It's where it started, apparently, but it kind of got out of hand. I thought, Donald Trump, hit a home run, was acted presidential, but I think that's an easy job to do. The fact that you act presidential. Anyone can do that. You can always read a prompter, and one of the reasons, one of the things that the right complained about Barack Obama was how he was able to read the prompter pretty well. And I think anyone can do that, and Donald Trump can. I don't think that's a challenging thing to do, and it seems as if people are just giving him credit for what a 5-year-old could easily do.
No, exactly. And I completely agree with that. That's why I found it very interesting why so many people do give him a lot of credit on the speech, but many people have, when it's like I said, there's nothing new there. The content of pretty much everything he said, it's identical to what he said on the campaign trail.
It's really
so ultimately
a PG version of his campaign trail.
Yeah, really my takeaway from it was a lot of people don't seem to care what Trump is saying or what he promises or what he intends to do, just so long as he words it in a way that is palatable.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah. I think a good friend of mine said to me, and he voted for Trump because he cared more about actions as opposed to speech.
Yeah.
And what made a lot of people complain about Trump was really how he spoke.
Mm-hmm.
It was raw. Trump has always been a raw character. His personality is braggadocious. Very braggadocious,
to say the least.
Yeah.
Clinical.
He's a narcissist. A clinical
yes.
narcissist, and at times I could say that he's a pathological liar. He just lies a lot and has no sense of drawing truths out of good sources.
That's true. Although in that point, I find it interesting that most of his lies are basically going into his own ego in terms of bragging about things like, I had the greatest turnout for an inauguration day ever. No, you didn't, but you just said that because you can't stand the thought that there were fewer people for you than there were for Obama. Whereas at the same time, we're dealing with a situation where a lot of people are freaking out because he's actually keeping his campaign promises more than most people, and that terrifies people.
That did. And once
it's interesting to see where the lying comes in. You know what? Ultimately, even if I was in a position where I hated Trump, I was on the other side. Hypothetically, if I was on the other side, I hated Trump, everything that he's doing. I can't stand any of the promises. I'd ultimately have to give him credit for actually trying to follow through with them. More than what most people do. He's so far stunning me that he's actually sticking to them because a lot of the stuff I figured he's going to pay lip service to it and not actually work towards.
Well, I think to some degree, I think sincerity is somewhat overrated virtue. The fact that you really mean what you mean and you're going to execute what you mean. I mean, it's...
For me, basically, it's all about hypocrisy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
If it's something important, if it's of substance, I don't want to see you lie.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff with his bragging and whatnot, it's not of substance. I don't care. Of course he's lying about it. It's not something I figure is important.
Yeah, the issue with his inaugural audience, what was it?
The inaugural turnout.
Turnout. It's I agree. It's really more about his personality, his ego, as opposed to substantial issues.
Yeah. But this is actually this was something I had spoken to with another friend of mine just today. Just today, there was the big story hitting all of the main newspapers and everything about the tweet he sent out that, hey, Obama was wiretapping me during the election. He wiretapping me illegally.
Mm-hmm.
Was a terrible thing. He's done the worst wiretaps all over me. Was
that Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump there?
Well, that was attempted to be Donald Trump, but you're right. That could have was far more Bernie Sanders. Ultimately, though, the big thing that gets me is that I'm not seeing why it's a big story that Trump is saying something like that. It's crazy. He has no evidence. It's a stupid thing to say. What I care about, and to me where the story is he going to act on that? Is he going to actually open up an investigation? Is he going to do something about it? Or is this basically just him waking up and throwing out something stupid on Twitter he always does?
Okay, so I always thought as the president as a person of level-headedness.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I know.
And they should be.
They should be.
Frankly, I would agree that while I kind of enjoy Trump's antics to an extent, I am
dangerous.
hoping that he's not setting a standard here. That said, we all know what we're getting with the guy.
Okay,
so I don't quite follow where people freak out and have to do front page articles about whatever thing he tweets out.
So what the thing why I was afraid of voting for Trump was that, as you kind of indicated, that you were kind of saying that hopefully Donald Trump doesn't set some sort of precedence, but
in terms of just
personality, right?
Yeah, in terms of expected personality.
But I think one of my great fears is that he's creating this precedence of personality in terms of the presidency, and we could possibly see a Donald Trump not from the right, but from the left. And from the left, I think is definitely more horrific.
I don't know.
Maybe, right? I mean, it's
honestly, I don't think so.
Don't you think so?
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Because
to be perfectly honest,
well, the
the
right is more grounded in tradition as opposed to the newfangled ideas.
Well, absolutely. But again, that's one of those things that I like about Trump is that he's shaking that up. I would, like we introed it, I'm not right or left really. I would generally kind of go a bit more Republican in some things, but
there's a certain level of common sense.
They piss me off more than the Democrats because of that tradition. Mm-hmm. That tradition has needed a good slap in the ass for a while now to get them to kind of come off of that.
Oh, well, big slap in the ass because they're elephants.
Yes.
Huge elephants.
And a tweak of the nose and whatnot. Yeah. Although slapping the ass would be more appropriate for the Democrats, so,
Oh, yeah, but...
I guess it would mean something a little different with the Democrats.
Slapping the ass, the Democrats. Slapping their arse.
Slapping the arse of the ass.
Of the ass.
We'll have to clarify
ass
a little
of
bit
the arse.
further.
Ass of the arse. Can it go the other way? But no, I think in summary, I think what we're trying to get at is that both the Republicans and Democrats have failed to address certain concerns of ours, and definitely Democrats when it comes to certain topics, especially about radical Islam and rampant illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. And Republicans, it seems that they're kind of like light Democrats in some regard.
I don't even think that they're light Democrats. I think that they're basically the exact same as the Democrats. The only thing is the only difference is practically between the two that I've seen between. Let's be honest here. We're both young, so complete disclosure on this. We're both younger than 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in my lifetime, The vast majority of what I've seen would be the George Bush administration and the Obama administration. A little bit of the Clinton administration,
Right.
but I was very young then.
Right.
So comparing between the two there, ultimately, I'm not seeing the practical difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. I'm not even really seeing the functional difference between the two.
I think
They are both, to me, identical in terms of what I would consider more important, looking towards American citizens acting in their best interests, and also what I would hope is being more responsible with the budget. I mean, where I could see it is a lot of people would talk about, Republicans got to be working for smaller government, less money, smaller taxes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You certainly didn't get that during the Bush years.
No, definitely not.
You spent a shitload of money.
You even see it in some states where you have Republican governors who have been somewhat reckless with government spending.
Massive amounts of spending. Between the both of them. Really, the only differences that I see are the superficial ones that are really pointless and that I wish they would both shut up about. Republicans, we got to be anti-abortion and shut down Planned Parenthood. And the Democrats, hey, we got to worry about which bathrooms the transgender people are going into, and that's the most important thing. No, I don't think the vast majority of people care.
No, I think I don't think so. And what's kind of funny? I mean, let's go back to California,
which is really the bastion of what we're talking about, with so many issues, with so many people worried about the social concerns.
Well, yeah, and then there's definitely, and then I think here's one of the things that a lot of people don't know a lot is that Ronald Reagan was governor of California, and he always prided himself of reducing the budget of California, and yet he was outperformed by Moonbeam, by Governor Brown, actually. He was a Democrat. He's a Democrat.
For anybody outside of California, Jerry Brown is well known as
Governor Moonbeam.
Well, this is the weird thing. We probably have to explain this here. Jerry Brown, the current governor, used to be the governor back in the 1960s. And got the name Moonbeam because of his crazy hippie ideas.
I believe it's 1970s.
1970s?
Yeah. So he came after Ronald Reagan.
Okay. He still had a lot of the hippie mentality in it.
But his father was.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. His big thing with Moonbeam is he was doing a lot to originally in his first terms back in the 70s was to shut down a lot of the improvements that his father had been doing to build up California, particularly with the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And he's still basically doing that today.
He is.
He's not doing anything to try to improve freeways or roads or anything. He's got that stupid-ass high-speed rail, which is not high-speed rail. There's a whole podcast we can do on that one.
Yeah, you could discuss about
save that for next time.
Discuss that. I had actually, so 2008 was my first election. My dad turned 18 years old, so having been a Japanophile, knowing that Japan had very good high-speed rails, I had voted for high-speed rail in 2008. But knowing what I know now, I probably would not.
Lord knows you ain't gonna get a Shinkansen.
Oh, damn it! I need Shinkansen to go from LA to SF. 3 hours. I guess we can definitely talk about that in the next podcast. Just have a rant about high-speed rail in California and the budgetary issues, as well as the practicality of even having a high-speed rail in California.
Also, how most everything they've said from the beginning and continue.
It's a lie. It says that the budget has expanded considerably since 2008.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is what we will.
But we'll talk about this later next week. I guess we could just sign off from here.
That sounds good. Yeah. So then this was the first meeting of drunken California expats.
No, no. It is California Expat Anonymous.
California Expat Anonymous. We're clearly not doing too well
Oh,
in that
God.
12-step program of ours. So.
Oh, that's right. Well,
But in any event, this has been, speaking myself, this is N.R. Snowden.
and this is N.R. Bernie. Okay, see you next week.
Everybody can be bought. I wish I was wrong, but I'm not. Everybody is for sale. They'll disappoint you without fail. And greed will win out in the end. There's nothing you could do about it, my friend, my friend, my friend. So make the most of what you got. 'Cause everybody can be bought. Might just be my perception. Maybe it's all in my mind. For every rule, there are exceptions. No matter how hard I search, I still find it took some time to figure out the evidence leaves little doubt. And to the core, it does rot. Everybody can be bought. I might sound cynical, but I'm not. I'm not. Everybody can be bought. Everyone is bought. Everyone is bought. No, no, no. 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 Everybody can be bought. I wish I was wrong, but I'm not.